There are days when it feels like the universe is winking at you. You're thinking about someone you haven't seen in years, and suddenly your phone rings, showing their name on the screen. Or you're walking down an ordinary street, turn a corner, and find an abandoned book on a bench. You open it at random and discover a sentence that answers word for word a question you've been pondering for days. Is this just a coincidence, pure luck, or chance? Maybe not. Because sometimes in life, the improbable doesn't just happen. It happens with a strange kind of meaning, as if behind the everyday scenes there's a hidden design, an invisible logic connecting disconnected events on the surface, but deeply linked beneath, as if the world were full of signals waiting to be read. Carl Gustav Jung, a Swiss psychiatrist who devoted his life to exploring the human soul, was one of the first to name this phenomenon synchronicity. For Jung, synchronicity was neither superstition nor cheap mysticism. It was a form of connection between events that don't have a direct cause and effect relationship, but share a profound meaning. In other words, it's not that one thing causes the other, but that both happen at the same time in a way that is deeply significant to the person experiencing them. A simple example. You're going through an existential crisis, searching for new meaning in your life. You go for a walk to clear your mind, and suddenly you see a phrase written on a wall. The answer is within you. It may seem generic, but why that phrase there right now? Jung didn't believe these occurrences were mere coincidences. He said, synchronicity is the temporal coincidence of two or more events connected by meaning, not by cause. In other words, nothing happens by accident. What we call chance might simply be what we don't yet understand, as if the universe spoke a forgotten language that sometimes echoes inside us. What's even more unsettling is this. The more attentive we are, the more frequent these coincidences seem to become. It's like tuning a radio. When we're distracted, all we hear is noise. But when we find the right frequency, signals emerge clearly and surprisingly. And then comes the suspicion. What if life is far more symbolic than we think? What if what we call chance is actually a reflection of something deeper? Because let's be honest, we've all experienced something that defies pure logic. Something we can't explain, but feel like a kind of intimate message, a silent conversation between our inner world and the outer reality. Perhaps there's an invisible thread connecting everything, a mysterious weave between our destiny and the flow of reality, an intelligence operating beyond linear time, beyond cause and effect. And if that's true, then each coincidence might be just a clue, a crack in the wall of rationality through which the light of meaning seeps in. What if you started to see your life as a tapestry woven by something greater than yourself? What if those scattered, seemingly random moments, the phrases you overhear, the repeated symbols, are pieces of a map? A map that doesn't reveal itself through logic, but through sensitivity. This is the starting point. We're not talking about superstition here. We're talking about a deep principle of connection, an intelligence dancing with our choices, thoughts, and quietest desires. We're talking about the mystery of symbols and synchronicity, and I'll show you proof. "I don't believe God plays dice with the universe." This phrase, attributed to Albert Einstein, is more than a clever metaphor. It's a philosophical statement about the deep order of the cosmos. Though Einstein was referring to the unsettling principles of quantum mechanics, his intuition touched on something beyond physics, an ancient, almost mythical suspicion that the universe is held together by invisible laws, by a harmony we don't fully understand. Jung, not a physicist himself, shared this intuition. He saw the world not only as matter and cause, but also as symbol and meaning. From this symbolic view, he discovered that life sometimes follows a logic that isn't causal, but is deeply meaningful, what he called synchronicity. Imagine for a moment that the universe is a musical score. At first glance, you might see scattered notes played by different instruments, by different musicians in different places. But if you listen closely, if you stop focusing on individual notes and start hearing the whole, you perceive a melody, a rhythm, an intention. That's what Jung sensed in synchronic phenomena, a secret melody, an invisible pattern connecting the inner and outer, the soul and the world, desire and manifestation. What if things don't just happen randomly, but happen when they are meant to? What if there is a soul time different from clock time? Jung proposed that certain external events happen simultaneously with internal psychic states in such precise and meaningful ways that they defy explanation as mere coincidence. And here's where it gets even more fascinating. In the mid-20th century, Jung met Wolfgang Pauli, one of the fathers of quantum physics. Pauli was initially skeptical, but began sharing with Jung dreams, intuitions, and coincidences he couldn't explain scientifically. Together, they explored the idea that the physical world and the psychic world aren't separate, but deeply intertwined in ways traditional science didn't acknowledge. This collaboration led to a fascinating hypothesis. The universe has a dual structure, a material dimension governed by physical laws and a psychic dimension where meaning operates. And sometimes these dimensions intersect like underground rivers, producing those synchronous events that seem guided by a higher intelligence. It's not magic or chance, but resonance. This resonance can't be measured by instruments, but it can be felt. We feel it when something clicks inside us, when an external message touches a long-repressed internal emotion, when life seems to speak in code. Here's a powerful idea. Maybe the universe isn't a machine, as 19th century scientists thought. Maybe it's a living, sensitive mind or organism capable of responding to our inner states. Have you noticed that the more aligned you are with yourself, the more everything around you flows effortlessly? That when you act from authenticity, doors open easily? And when you ignore your intuition, life puts obstacles in your way repeatedly? That's not coincidence. It's energetic coherence, the outer world reflecting your inner state, as if the universe were a mirror showing not only who you are, but who you're called to be. Synchronicity is that moment when the boundary between self and world dissolves, and both dance the same choreography. It's a wordless language, an order beyond traditional logic, but full of purpose. When we start perceiving it, life stops feeling like a series of disconnected events and becomes a meaningful narrative, a story waiting to be read. Some stories seem written by an invisible screenwriter, stories where a small twist, an unlikely coincidence, changes the course of a life forever. Not because there's a rational explanation, but because there's a kind of background music guiding each scene's exact timing. A woman misses her usual train, gets frustrated, is delayed, changes her routine, and ends up in a cafe she's never been to before. There, a stranger smiles at her. They talk, and years later, that meeting becomes the start of a family. A blocked writer opens a random book looking for inspiration, finds a sentence that shakes his soul, resumes writing, publishes work that changes not only his life, but the lives of thousands of readers. Coincidences? Or consider Jung's experience during a session with a highly rational patient emotionally closed off. He tried to unlock a crucial point when the woman told him about a dream featuring a golden beetle. At that moment, an unusual sound caught Jung's attention. He stood and opened the window. A green gold beetle, rare for that time of year, had just hit the glass. He showed it to the patient and said, "Here is your beetle." That coincidence broke something inside her. Her rational shell cracked. The therapy was able to progress because the symbol from her dream appeared in reality, as if the unconscious had touched the physical world to be heard. From experiences like this, Jung realized that synchronicities were not mere anecdotes, but visible signs of a deeper psychic order. The unconscious communicates not only through symbols and dreams, but also, most surprisingly, through external events, as if the soul had the power to shape reality in order to make itself known. There's something moving about these stories. They resonate with a part of us that no longer accepts simple explanations. Because at some point, we've all felt that something, whether a force, an impulse, or an intuition, pushed us in a very specific direction. And when we look back and connect the dots with the clarity that time brings, we see that what once seemed random was actually essential. How many times have you met the right person at the wrong moment, only to realize that moment was exactly what you needed for your life to change? How many times has a painful loss forced you to look inward, rethink everything, and change course? Synchronicity often shows up in times of crisis, when what we know crumbles, when control slips away, when the ego gives way and the soul takes the wheel. It's no accident that synchronicities appear then, because when the conscious structure weakens, the deeper psyche has room to surface, expressing itself through symbols, repeated meaningful coincidences. This principle is also found in literature. Joseph Campbell, the mythologist who studied common patterns in universal myths, spoke of the call to adventure. In many stories, the hero receives a strange sign, a coincidence, or an unexpected encounter that pulls them out of their ordinary world and sends them on a quest for self-discovery. Real life isn't so different. The soul calls, but not with words. It uses symptoms, signs, and unexpected meetings weighted with emotional significance impossible to ignore. When we answer that call, when we decide to follow the golden thread of meaning, even without knowing where it leads, life begins to feel different. A woman recounted that after losing her mother, she started seeing blue butterflies everywhere, something she'd never noticed before. They appeared at important moments, in dreams, on murals, during solitary walks. At first, she thought it was her imagination, but eventually she understood that the butterfly was a symbol of transformation, a gentle presence reminding her that love doesn't disappear. It simply changes form. The experience was real and symbolic. It's the felt meaning that matters more than any logical explanation. Synchronicities don't aim to convince skeptics. They're not formulas, but lived mysteries. When you experience them, something inside settles. A soft, silent certainty arises. This had to happen, as if the soul knew before the mind, as if destiny were not an imposition, but a symphony unfolding as we listen. And the more attentive we are, the more notes we discover, the more symbols appear, and the more coincidences whisper, "Keep going, you're on the right path." There's an ancient idea whispered by philosophers, poets, and mystics. Before we are born, our soul already knows the path, not the details, not the names, but the direction, the North Star, the essential melody we came to embody. Plato hinted at this in his myth of air, where souls choose their lives before incarnation. The Stoics spoke of the Logos, an intelligence governing the cosmos, to which each person is connected. In the East, the concept of Dharma points to the same idea, a unique inner purpose guiding us beyond personal desire. Carl Jung, from the depths of psychology, also grasped this movement. He didn't call it fate, but the process of individuation, the unfolding of what we already are in potential, like a seed containing the full form of the tree, needing time, soil, and direction to grow. How does this unfold? Through signs, synchronicities, and inner impulses we can't fully explain, but feel as inevitable. A sudden passion, an inexplicable rejection, a decision emerging from within, as if someone whispered to us from the center of our chest. Some call it intuition, others vocation, and others destiny. But maybe it's simply the soul remembering the map it chose before birth. Have you ever wondered why certain things attract you for no clear reason? Why since childhood, certain themes, places, sounds, or images stir you inexplicably? That's no coincidence. It's deep memory, a call. When we ignore this call, when we stray from our inner path out of fear, comfort, or external pressure, life pushes back, sometimes gently, sometimes forcefully, with losses, breakups, illness, or existential crises, not to punish us, but to wake us up. because the soul never forgets and will do whatever it takes to remind you of what you came here to do. Synchronicities, then, are not just magical moments. They are compasses, confirmations, markers on the path telling us, this is yours, this belongs to you, this aligns with your essence. Interestingly, the more aligned we are with ourselves, the more frequent these meaningful coincidences become. Life seems to organize itself in our favor. The right people appear, opportunities arise, reality becomes an ally. But when we move away from that inner truth, everything stalls. Paths darken, and signs become warnings instead of guides. That's why paying attention to synchronicities isn't superstition. It's a spiritual practice, a form of listening. It requires the courage to follow what resonates with our soul, even when the mind doubts. Because the soul doesn't shout, it whispers. And those who don't cultivate silence won't hear it. At some point in life, everyone faces a choice. Follow the path laid out by others, driven by fear or duty, or listen to that inner call that offers no guarantees, but gives meaning. That choice, often unconscious, shapes the quality of our lives. It's not about success or achieving goals, but about responding to the call vibrating deep within. And when we answer, everything changes. As Jung said, I am not what happened to me, I am what I choose to become. Or perhaps what the soul already chose us to be, and we are merely remembering. What if every coincidence, every unexpected encounter, every repeated symbol were ways life speaks to you? What if what you call chance were actually an open letter from the universe, written in the language of the soul? Maybe we've been trained to see life as a series of disconnected events ruled by statistics and chaos. But deep down, something inside us knows that's not true. Because there are moments we can't forget, moments etched in memory not for what happened, but for how they resonated. Because something within us was touched, named, reminded. Those moments don't ask for analysis, they ask for presence. And that is the key, presence. Being awake enough to notice when the soul is speaking. Sometimes it does so in dreams, sometimes in patterns, sometimes in chance meetings that feel tailor-made to answer our most secret questions. When we stop seeing life as a blind machine and start seeing it as a conversation, everything changes. Synchronicity isn't an extraordinary phenomenon reserved for a few. It's a universal language, but it only answers when there is someone listening. Listening is an act of love, humility, and acceptance that we don't control everything, but we are not lost either. There is an invisible thread, though unseen. It can be felt. How do we feel it? Through silence, attention, intuition, and gratitude. Because every time you give thanks, honor the mystery, and choose meaning over control, you come closer to your truth. That truth isn't something to reason out. It must be embodied. So I invite you to see your life, not just as a timeline, but as a poem. To remember the moments when everything fit together, To think about times when something or someone appeared by chance and changed your course. To honor the signs you ignored and those you followed. Nothing happens by accident. Everything has a reason, and that reason isn't always visible to the eyes, but always felt by the soul. Maybe we can't prove synchronicity with equations, but we can live it as an inner truth. Because when you stop seeking certainty and start seeking meaning, when you stop forcing your path and begin listening to it, when you pause, breathe, and say, I am here, I am present, I am willing to see, then the universe answers beautifully, mysteriously, with that soft certainty that you are not alone, that you are being guided, that your soul has silently been tracing this path long before you knew it. And everything, every stone, every shadow, every encounter, every pain was just a way to remind you who you truly are.